Hey again, everybody. It's Rob Ryder. 15 August 2018. Today, Uncle Sam ain't released me yet. That's what U.S. Army stood for, as I was told in my days in the Army. U.S. Army. Uncle Sam ain't released me yet. Well, as it turns out, according to Selective Service, you ain't been released yet either. So this is about the Selective Service System, the book, by the book compliance. If you want to comply with what the Selective Service System says, well, we should go read the law and the act to see what it says, because people seem to have the wrong perception. Because notice, classification is required part of registration. Not only must you be registration, you must be classified. And I touched on this in my last video, just a little bit, but I wanted to dedicate one whole video to this, and I'm really hoping that if any of you have relatives that are in the military, especially if they're a first sergeant, sergeant major, sergeant first class, higher ranking NCO, which according to the Bible, those would be the centurions, which much favored by Jesus, New Testament. Well, when we take a look here in a second at the oath that an enlisted man takes, they take an oath to the orders of the president. And the Selective Service Act is an order from the president. So we needed the military, the enlisted in the military need to ensure that the military is following the rules. It's not the officers that run the military, it's the enlisted. It's the non-commissioned officers, backbone of the military. Just go ask them. Okay, Rob Ryder email. This is the best way to get a hold of me. I don't read the comments and so forth. I just don't have time. But if you want to email me, quarterrecord@aol.com. I do my best to get to them, but I really can't get to all of them all the time. Phone 616-712-6179. That works sometimes. And so that you know, these videos, I'm almost at 300 videos now. These videos are made possible because of your donations. Thank you very much. If you could donate, I could really use it again. Go figure. PayPal. That would be robryder@aol.com. That's the PayPal account name. They use email addresses. If you don't have a PayPal account, well, I could send you a PayPal request for payment. And to do that, I would need your email address and the amount you'd like to donate, and then I would send you a notice through PayPal, and you can pay for it however you please, electronic check or credit card or whatever they allow you to do. Or there's always the mail. Robert Allen Retlewski, 10955 14 Mile Road Northeast, Rockford, Michigan, 49341 8664. Note to self, Ditech, the debt collector. That was my last video. I just did a video yesterday called Ditech, the debt collector. If you know anybody who's in a foreclosure, that may clue you in on, what's happening isn't at all by the law. And but in there I had made reference to a few things that I don't know that I covered well enough. So, Sergeant Major, just give me 1 second to clear this up for somebody. Here we are. What was that thing? Okay, so what... I did a video on the foreclosure going on with Terry Lynn Wilson in Wisconsin, and that the plaintiff in her case is Ditech Financial LLC. Well, they were sending certain kinds of paper before the court case was going on and so forth, and we did some things on 8-3, there was a court hearing, and then at 8-4, this letter was generated, which says Ditech Financial LLC, but I don't ever remember seeing anything that said Ditech, a Walter company on it before. And now they've added, in parentheses, Ditech behind this name. So now RE, Ditech Financial LLC, parentheses, quotes, Ditech inside of all that. That's really like a legal fiction. That isn't the name of anything. They've made up a name to use in this case, gave it an account number and a property address, which is supposed to be Terry's property address. But it says here at the bottom, this communication is from a debt collector. It's an attempt to collect a debt, and any information obtained will be used for that purpose. Well, I thought Ditech LLC, Financial LLC, was a lender. I thought Ditech was a lender. But now all of a sudden they've become a debt collector. And so that isn't who was going to court saying they were the debt collector. In court, it was the attorney firm. So I just want to be sure I showed that letter because I had forgotten to yesterday. And okay. Okay, so why are we here? Well, there are a number of things, and these had to do with those foreclosures. Now, if you're in a foreclosure, the attorney is going to put in some kind of form saying that they did something in accordance with the Selective Service Systems Act or Selective Service Act. And in Terry's case, and Terry's a female, right? Terry L. Wilson. That isn't her name. Her name's Terry Lynn Wilson, but they never use your legal name. Declaration of non-military service, right? Non-military, all one word, non-military service. Never been in the military. We need to stop and think about this for a second. Your military service starts as soon as you sign up for the Selective Service System because you go into the inactive reserves. So you're in the military, right? You may be in active military, but you're not non-military. And so what this guy is saying basically is that, you know, if Terry had been a male and was supposed to have registered, she hadn't done that. But you can see when they do the search, so they say they do a search online. That's really what this letter says. I obtained a certificate from the United States Department of Defense website showing that the defendant, respondent, Terry L. Wilson, is not on active duty status. The certificate is attached. Well, first of all, the United States Department of Defense doesn't have anything to do with the Selective Service System. They're two completely separated agencies. But they're doing this form, and they're not using a middle name. Where's Terry Lynn's middle name? There's a place for it. They didn't use it. They didn't put her birth date, and we don't really know what Social Security number they used for whoever Wilson Terry is. To make the determination, they did. But, you know, here's the document, and here's why it is, because it's part of 50 U.S.C. APP, which is Appendix, I guess it is. Selective Service or Service Members Civil Relief Act, which is part of the Selective Service System now. So, you know, it does mean something. And now, here's the thing. If you see active with an A, well, that means you're on active duty today. But if you see active, proper case, or in lowercase, that's just like, you know, not that you're in the military, just that you're doing something with the military. One's a proper noun and one's a common noun. And like they say here, all active with a capital A, Guard Reserves. So I was in a member of the active duty military, capital A, active duty military in the United States Army. Which is different than just saying you're active in the military, which would mean that you registered. That would be active. And so they're using this against us. They did the same thing with Bruce, another guy that had foreclosure going on, except they called his an affidavit. Let's look at Terry's again. They don't call it an affidavit for her. They call it a declaration. You know, I don't know how important these differences are, but I always look for the things that are different. Affidavit of non-military service. Hey, here's one of those court cases. If you watched the video I just did on Ditech, you would see that in Terry's case, they used two different styles of numbers, 2018 CV 000136 and 18 CV 136. They did the same with Bruce. Here's the 17 CV 81 style, which is affidavit of non-military service. Now, those two different styles of cases means, well, there's two different cases going on in different courts. Another thing they don't tell you about, but I covered that in the last video. Okay, so these things are important, this idea of the selective service. I'm just saying, because it's something they go look at if you're in a foreclosure. They have to put this form in. So what the heck is that all about? And so the easiest way for me to do it in this video, and it's going to take a while of, you know, me talking it through, because this is a 50-page thing, and the Selective Service System from the Code of Federal Regulations is 72 pages. It may take us a while. I'm not going through the whole thing. I've highlighted a bunch of sections, but even then it's still a bunch, right? So without any further ado, let me begin. But I want to make one more thing perfectly clear before we start with this. We're going to be talking about residence addresses. And if you were to look at a change address form, or as it turns out, if you look at a form for a passport, although it's not quite so clear maybe, it's very clear on this. When they say residence address, they want street and number. Right? And even for the mailing address, they want street and number. They don't want number and street. And so then the question is, well, what is your residence address? Because your place of residence isn't where your house is. It's just the municipality that you're in. Where your permanent residence, by definition, I should say, so in the Michigan Constitution, it says in there that it's been left up to the legislature to define residence for voters or something like that. I don't know that it's ever really been defined. But they do talk about in the health code about permanent residence. And I guess because we're here, we should just go ahead and look at that real quick. So I had that also. Where is that one? Oh, jeepers. Here we go. Let's just look at what the definition is real quick. So permanent residence, A single family house, which is the person's permanent residence. So your permanent residence is your house. But your place of residence is the municipality. So what do they mean by residence when they just say that? Which modifier are they using that they didn't tell us? They just, they assume that we know these things. Okay. So what did the Act have to say? An act to provide for the common defense by increasing the strength of the armed forces of the United States, including reserve components thereof, for other purposes. Congressional Declaration of Policy. This act may be cited as Military Selective Service Act. The Congress declares that an adequate armed strength must be achieved and maintained to ensure security of this nation. The Congress further declares that in a free society, the obligations and privileges of serving the armed forces and their reserve components thereof should be shared generally in accordance with the system of selection, which is fair and just and which is consistent with the maintenance of an effective national economy. So, obligations and privileges of the armed forces and their reserve components. Well, you're in the unregulated militia or unorganized militia when you do the Selective Service Act and register. But we're not being classified. That's the key, right? Maybe registered, but you're not classified. The Congress further declares, in accordance with our traditional military policy, as expressed in the National Defense Act of 1916, I have to read that, as amended, that it is essential that the strength and organization of the National Guard, both ground and air, as an integral part of first-line defenses of this nation, be at all times maintained and assured. To this end is the intent of Congress that whenever Congress shall determine that units and organizations are needed for the national security in excess of those of regular components of the ground forces and the Air Force and those in active service under this title, the National Guard in the United States, blah, 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 and they go on and on. Necessary. The Congress shall further declares adequate provisions for national security, requires maximum effort in the fields of scientific research and development and fullest possible utilization of the national technology, scientific, and other critical manpower resources. Congress further declares that the Selective Service System should remain administratively independent of any other agency, including the Department of Defense. Which means if you were, enlisted in the military and you volunteered, it has nothing to do with Selective Service, because you volunteered into the Department of Defense. but did you register and be classified in the Selective Service System? Because one of the classifications is that you're volunteering for the frickin' military. I'll show you that in a second. But what does it say about registration? So, except as otherwise provided, every male citizen of the United States and every other male person residing in the United States who, on the day or days fixed for the first or any subsequent registration, is between the ages of 18 and 26 to present himself for and submit to registration at such time and place or places in such manner as shall be determined by proclamation of the President and by the orders and regulations prescribed hereunder. So, if the President proclaimed it, if you're an enlisted man in the military, you have to do it. You have your oath is to the President. I'd be right here. Here's the two different oaths. Here's the oath for the commissioned officer, and here's an oath for enlisted. No, this is the enlistment up here, and this is the commission. In the commission, they put their Social Security number as part of their oath. But they don't take an oath to the President, right? Where the commission says that I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Well, the officers don't swear an oath to obey the orders of the President of the United States. So, because the President orders something, as an enlisted man, you have to follow that. So what did the President order? Registration under Selective Service Act. Okay, so now here we go. Jimmy Carter is going to, but he's the President of the United States of America. Now I said the President of the United States. He says he's President of the United States of America. It's so confusing. Who's the United States of America? Well, that's King George's jurisdiction. It's in the Treaty of Peace, 1783. King George says he's the King of the United States of America. Okay, but now, therefore, I, Jimmy Carter, President of the United States of America, by authority vested in me by military selective service as amended. That could be our out because it was never really, the President of the United States never said we had to do it. This other guy did, United States of America. But it says that if you're born after January 1st, 1960, shall present themselves for registration in a manner and at the time and places as herein provided. I was born in 1958. I actually didn't have to comply with this. But there you go. He said you had to. So now what do we have to do? Persons who are required, who are in the United States, shall register at places and by means designated by Director of Selective Services. These places and means shall include, but are not limited to, any classified United States Post Office. We need to know what that means. What's a classified United States Post Office? The Selective Service Internet, web, telephonic registration, registration on approved government forms, registration through high school and college registrars, and Selective Service reminder mail back card. Those are ways to register. If you're not in the United States, shall register via places and methods authorized by the Director of Selective Service, yada, yada, yada. Okay, manner of registration. When reporting for registration, each person shall present for inspection reasonable evidence of his identity. After registration, each person shall keep the Selective Service informed of his or her address. So, even if you did register and you've changed your address and you didn't tell them, well, you're already wrong. The President said you shall. Having proclaimed these requirements for registration, I urge everyone, including employees in the private and public sector, to cooperate with and assist those persons who are required to be registered, that would be you, military, and if enlisted, to ensure a timely and complete registration. I also direct heads of the executive agencies when requested by a director of selective service and the extent permitted by law to cooperate and assist in carrying out these blah, 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 blah. Yeah, United States of America. So, 454 provisions persons liable for training and service without reading the whole thing, provided that each registrant shall be immediately liable when immediately what? Liable for classification and examination, and shall, as soon as practicable, following his registration, when? Well, as soon as he can, after he's been registered, be so classified and examined, both physically and mentally, in order to determine his availability for induction, for training, and service in the armed forces. And so induction, that would mean, the draft, to be inducted into the draft, but that's different than volunteering. So volunteering into the military, into the all-volunteer Army, isn't the same as being registered and classified for the draft under the induction process. Further, that notwithstanding any other provisions of law, any registrant who has failed or refused to report for induction shall continue to remain liable for induction when available, shall be immediately inducted. Well, we're not worried about induction. We're worried about registration and classification. The President is authorized from time to time, whether or not a state of war exists, to select and induct into the armed forces of the United States for training and service in a manner provided by this title, including but not limited to, blah, 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 such number of persons as they may be required to provide and maintain the strength of the armed forces. So once you've been registered and classified, they can put you in the military. They can do it for 24 hours if they wanted to. Or whatever the minimum tide is. Right? They can do whatever they want. It's the military. Every person who is required to register under this title and who has not attained 19th anniversary, okay, they put them into the National Security Training Corps. The President is authorized from time to time, whether or not a state of war exists, to select and induct a training national, okay, they can put people in the National Training Corps. No person shall be inducted into the armed forces, okay, until his acceptability in all respects, including his physical and mental fitness, has been satisfactorily determined under standards prescribed by the Secretary of Defense. Armed Forces Qualification Test, except in time of war, national emergency declared by Congress, standards, requirements, fixed preceding to provisions. Land Forces of the United States, Army of the United States, Naval Forces of the United States, all of this is United States. Now, this is United States of America. That was my point. So, United States, United States, United States, United States. United States Navy, or United States Marine Corps, United States Coast Guard, Air Forces of the United States, Air Force of the United States. So, inducted into or enlisted, appointed, or ordered to active duty in the armed forces. No funds appropriated by Congress shall be used for the purpose of transporting, maintaining, and violation of provisions of this paragraph. Any person inducted into or enlisted, appointed, or ordered to active duty. Okay, length of service. Each person inducted into, okay, again, that's inducted. This is if they're calling you into the military, which is well after you've been registered. Shall be offered an opportunity to enlist in the United States Army. Okay. If you enlist, that's not induction. That's, volunteering to enlist. Provided further that active service performed pursuant to this section shall not prejudice his status as a member of such reserve component. Okay. Inducted, enlisted, appointed. Prior to enactment of some act, upon discharge from such enlistment, under honorable conditions, be transferred to a reserve component of the armed forces, 6 years or until sooner discharged. Notwithstanding any provision of law, any person who is inducted into the armed forces, okay, we're not doing that either. Stopped here. Okay, really, that's all the further I went in the Act, because most of this is The stuff is in the CFR. Let's see what there was. That's about being not citizens of the United States. Just quickly pop through them. Okay, Selective Service System. Establishment, construction, appointment of a director. Right, this is still part of the Act. Okay, established in the executive branch, Selective Service System, and a director of Selective Service, who shall be head thereof. The Selective Service System shall include a national headquarters, at least one state headquarters in each state, local boards, appeal boards, and other agencies provided by the subsection. And so these boards do exist, and we'll see they're supposed to be registering us, but they're not doing it. The director shall be, we're not going to the boards to be registered and classified. The functions of the Office of Selective Records. Hey, they're going to keep the records on if you did it or not. So why would, since they're the ones keeping the records, why would you, and it's not the Department of Defense, why are we going to the Department of Defense or the attorneys are to get these forms about your military service? You got a state director who shall represent the governor and be in immediate charge of state headquarters. No state director shall serve concurrently in an elected or appointed position. To create and establish within the Selective Service System civil, local boards, civil appeal boards, and such other civil agencies, including agencies of appeal, as may be necessary to carry out its functions with respect to registration, examination, classification, selection, assignment, delivery for induction, maintaining of records of persons registered under this title. So if you've been registered into a particular, state's books, then you should have a local board that has your records. That no person shall be disqualified from serving as counselor to registrants, including service as government appeal agent. So we're going to be looking for the government appeal agent because of his membership in a reserve component of the armed forces. My analysis, having read all this stuff, is there are certain military officers in the reserves that are actively engaged in the Selective Service System. We need to go talk to them about being properly classified. And that's why I'm hoping maybe some of the higher ranking non-commissioned officers might go have a talk with their officers over them and, find out what's going on. The local board and its staff shall perform their official duties only within the county or political subdivision corresponding thereto for which local board is established. Oh, and contact the Sergeant Major of the Army and have him go talk to the President. I'm sure that, President-elect Donald J. Trump doesn't want this to be happening. He's got a few things he needs to do to get straightened out. He's got to take his oath in his full legal name, comply with Statute at Large 1 Stat STAT 23. Look it up, Sergeant Major. 1 Stat 23 as the only oath that satisfies the 6th article of the Constitution. It says so in it. It's the very first law passed after the Constitution was ratified. And go show the president. Say, you got to take this oath, sir. Let's get it done. Each local board shall consist of 3 or 4 members to be appointed by the president from recommendations made by their respective governors or comparable executive officials. Now, what's comparable to governor? Oh, a commander-in-chief. Because all the states, see, we're still under martial law. We have been since 1863. That's why there's gold fringe flags in the courtroom. And we're always under a national emergency. All you need to do is go look at the Federal Register, put in the term national emergency, and start reading. Right? In the last 365 days, there's been 2,010 entries about national emergencies. What do we got this week? Continuation, national emergency with respect to export control regulations. Continuation of the national emergency with respect to Lebanon. Continuation of the national emergency with respect to transnational criminal organizations. Hey, that would be our current legal system. That's who we're talking about. Continuation of the national emergency with respect to North Korea, which isn't nearly as bad as our local court system. None of these people have a proper oath of office, a proper bond. They're not using their full legal name in a legal matter. That would be in Title 6, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 37, 6 CFR, Part 37. It has to do with the Real ID Act. It says you got to use your full legal name for identification. On and on and on. So yeah, hey, we are right now today in God knows how many different national emergencies. That's why the president writes executive orders instead of the Congress passing anything. Everything is done by an executive order. Intercounty boards, so there'll be at least one board per county. No citizen shall be denied membership on the local board or appeal board on account of sex. And inter-county local board consisting of at least one member from each component. So if you got very sparsely inhabited counties, they can have inter-county boards. Any such inter-county board shall, within its area, the same power and jurisdiction local board has in its area. No member of any local board shall be a member of the armed forces of the United States. Such local boards or separate panels thereof, each consisting of 3 or more members, shall, under these rules and regulations prescribed by the President, have the power with respect to jurisdiction of such local board to hear and determine, subject to right of appeal, to the appeal board, where authorized, all questions or claims with respect to inclusion for, exemption, or deferment from training and service under this title, all individuals within the jurisdiction of such local boards. The decision of such local board shall be final, except where an appeal is authorized and is taken in accordance with such rules and regulations that the President may prescribe, or things the President has to say. There shall be no less than one appeal board located within the area of each federal judicial district. And so, if you're not properly registered with these boards, then as far as the federal judicial district's going to see, you're an outlaw. You don't have any civil rights because you didn't comply with the frickin' act. You got no civil rights, no civil liberties in the federal judicial district because you didn't comply with the federal law. The decision of such appeal boards shall be final in cases before them on appeal unless modified or changed by the President. The President, upon appeal or upon his own motion, shall have power to determine all claims or questions with respect to inclusion for or exemption of the stuff we already talked about. No judicial review shall be made of a classification or processing of any registrant by local boards, appeal boards, or the President, except as a defense to criminal prosecution instituted under Section 12 of this title. I have to go read that sometime. After the registrant has responded either affirmatively or negatively to the order or to an order to report for induction or for civilian work, again, that's after classification, provided that such review shall go to the question of jurisdiction. I want to go back to this real quick. I think I covered this enough. So, if we were properly registered and classified in the federal judicial district, then you would be protected by the Constitution and the laws of the United States. But the system is set up now that you're not there, and anything you mail is not being mailed domestically in the United States. It's all being mailed outside of the United States because they're not using black postmarks with cancel to cancel the stamp with a 5-digit zip code inside the frickin' postmark. And that's the only way to obligate the United States on a postage stamp. What is that? That's 18 U.S.C. 8, I think it is. Obligations of the United States. All right? You want to obligate the United States, you got to have a black postage. You need a black canceled, or you need to have a canceled United States stamp. Well, as it turns out, they have 50-cent stamps that say United States on them. It's the only denomination that says United States, and it isn't all of them, just some of them. They say United States. All the rest of them say USA. But if you put a United States stamp on, even if it's on there, and you don't use a black cancel postmark by the postal code law, more on that in another video, well, then you're not in the United States. and they don't let you in, and they don't never use your legal name, and right, they're trying to keep you from appearing in the United States where you would be protected by the Constitution. Maintenance of system institute a volunteer program for meeting manpower needs. All right, the Selective Service System shall be maintained as an active standby organization. So what does that mean? That means it's functioning right now. It may be standby, but it's active. It's working. It has everything ready to go, which would include the registration, because they've been told to register, or there's a proclamation already from the president to follow this act. Jimmy Carter did the proclamation, and it says as soon as you're registered, you're immediately liable to be classified, and shall be classified as quick as possible. Well, that's done by a local board. And if you didn't go to a local board, you ain't been freaking classified. A complete registration classification structure capable of immediate operation in the event of a national emergency. Right? A complete registration and classification structure capable of immediate operation in the event of a national emergency. Well, we're in national emergencies. God knows how many, but 2,000 entries in the last year. Yeah, I'd say we're in them. So, okay, they're active. Personnel adequate to reinstitute immediately the full operation of the system, including military reservists who are trained to operate such system and who can be ordered to activate such system for purposes in the event of a national emergency. Hey, we have one. Please, Sergeant Major, go talk to somebody. Get this thing going. Emergency medical care. This is why hospitals have emergency rooms. Under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the President, funds available to carry out the provisions of this title shall also be made available for the payment of actual and reasonable expenses of emergency medical care, including hospitalization, of registrants who suffer illness, injury, and the transportation and burial of the remains of registrants who suffer death while acting under orders issued under provisions of this title. Well, the order is to be registered. So if you're registered, you have free medical through the hospital. You just got to go in through the emergency door, including hospitalization. Right? So it doesn't even need to be the hospital, just reasonable expenses of emergency medical care. But we're not properly registered. We don't need help. We don't need Obamacare. We need to get classified. It's already been paid for. You paying attention? Right? Somebody besides myself need to go find out how to get this done. So if you got a faster plan than me, please put it into action. Right? If you can get a SEAL team to go in and talk to somebody and get them to do the right thing, well, I'm all for it. Whatever needs to be done, send them in. Any member of the Selective Service System or any other person charged as herein provided with the duty of carrying out any of these provisions or the rules made, directions given under, who shall knowingly fail or neglect to perform such duty, and any person charged with such duty, or having exercised authority under said title, rules, regulations, directions, who shall knowingly make or be party to making any false, improper, incorrect registration, classification, physical or mental examination, deferment, induction, enrollment, or muster, and any person who shall knowingly make or be party to, I bet you they get in trouble for doing it. It's a long list of things that are wrong. But when you start putting 18 USC in, well, that's jail time. Is that 250,000? Maybe tried. Fines increased to 250 by USC something or other. Well, it was 10,000, so that must be 250,000. They just made a mistake. Registration certificate. Any person who knowingly transfers or delivers to another for the purpose of aiding or abetting or making any false identification or representation, any registration certificate, alien certificate, non-residence, da-da-da, has knowingly, da-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, you're going to go to jail for it. That includes omissions, right? Not just writing something on that's incorrect, not putting something on that is correct. Omission of a material fact is a false statement, according to 18 USC, United States Code 1001. The President may require Secretary of Health and Human Services to furnish the Director, from records available to the Secretary, the following information with respect to individuals who are members of any group of individuals required by proclamation of the United States under Article or Section 3 of this appendix to present themselves or to submit for registration under such section. Name, date of birth, social security number, account number, and address. Information furnished to the Director under this subsection may be used only for the purposes of enforcement of this act. So that's coming from the hospital, is what I'm thinking. Right? And so now we get this thing with addresses and what address they're using, account numbers, names, so forth and so on. Financial aid, except for is provided any person who is qualified to present himself and to be submitted for registration, fails to do so in accordance with any proclamation issued under such section or in accordance with the rule, regulation issued under such shall be ineligible for any form of assistance or benefit provided under Title IV Higher Education. So instead of getting it for free, they're going to make you pay for it. In order to receive any grant, loan, or work assistance, a person who is required under this section present himself for and submit to registration under such section shall file with the institution of higher education intends to attend or attending a statement of compliance with Section 3 of the regulations issued hereunder. So if you never put that in, right, you're not going to get the full benefit. Non-applicability of certain laws. An act to prevent pernicious political activities. All functions performed under this title shall be excluded from the operation of the Administrative Procedures Act. Who knows why? Well, here's that Soldiers and Sailors Civil Relief Act, right? It's part of the act. So they're using it, the attorneys are, so we should make sure that we're properly registered and classified. Every person shall be deemed to have notice of the requirements of this title upon publication by President. Definitions, Okay, give me just a second to... Okay, hey, we're just about done with the act. I just want to go over this one more time in this section where it says in Section 454, persons liable for training in service. I don't know what other section you need to show somebody to prove that you're correct. That each registrant shall be immediately liable for classification and examination, and shall, as soon as practicable, following his registration, be so classified and examined, both physically and mentally, in order to determine his availability for induction for training and service in the armed forces. So the simple answer to that is I think you need to go before somebody and, when they're at their official desk doing the official business of the Selective Service System, where they can, check you out for your mental state and your physical state and your classification and classify you. So all the details are covered much more in depth in the Selective Service System, which is in the Code of Federal Regulations. So what one would this be? Chapter, is that 16? Selective Service System? I think it is. All right, so again, I'm just going to go through and read things that I highlighted, but, everybody should go download these and kind of read through them themselves and highlight their own, because you're going to want to go take it and put it in front of somebody. Classification is the exercise of the powers to determine claims or questions with respect to inclusion for or exemption or deferment from training and service under the Selective Service Law. It's a law. You have to do it. A county includes, where applicable, counties, independent cities, similar subdivisions such as independent cities of Virginia and or parishes of Louisiana. So a lowercase county, that's just a defined territorial land, right? It's not like you don't need to be Kent County, which is a defined territorial land, but it could be something else like Oakfield Township, which is a defined territorial land. Whatever it is, they're supposed to have these local review boards. Local board of jurisdiction. Well, first of all, local board. A local board or a panel thereof of the Selective Service System is a group of not less than 3 civilian members appointed by the President after nomination by a governor to act in the cases of registration. The local board of jurisdiction is the local board to which a registrant is assigned and which has authority in accord with the provisions of this chapter to determine his claim or to issue him an order. His local board and registrant's local board refers to the local board of jurisdiction. His local board and registrant's local board. I still say we're going to get women are in here too, right? Because we might have said male citizens of the United States, and then it said all other males. Well, female is an all other male, right? It's a female. It's another male. Registrant is a person registered under the Selective Service Law. I didn't say a male. It said a person. Well, a person is according to Webster's, a person is a body and a soul. A registrant is a body and a soul registered under the Selective Service Law. Well, that would take male and female out of the system. The term Selective Service Law includes the Military Selective Service Act, all rules, regulations issued thereunder, and proclamations of the President pertaining to registration under this act, and the President issued a proclamation. And Jimmy Carter did. Now, he said he's United States of America, so that's a defect as far as I can see. But at some point, we just got to go say, hey, where's the board, and show me that I'm in the book. Did I turn this back on? We did. Okay, one more thing popped in my head. I want to be sure that I covered it. Under Section 456 of the Act, deferments and exemptions from training and service. I'm not reading this whole thing. It says, this is like 10 pages later because it started on page 19. We're now on page 29. There shall be posted in a conspicuous place at the office of each local board a list setting forth the names and classifications of those persons who have been classified by such board. So someplace they need to have a list of all the names of all the people and their classification at these local boards we're talking about. Okay, because that's what we're talking about here, local boards. So these people are supposed to have information on you. The Director of Selective Service shall divide each state into local board areas and establish local boards. There shall be at least one local board in each county, except where the Director of Selective Services establishes an inter-county board. Designations. The Director of Selective Service shall assign each local board within a state a specific identifying number by which it shall be known. How do you know what it is? By its number. By the numbers. Jurisdiction. The local board shall have full authority to perform all acts within jurisdiction authorized by law to include acting on any claim presented to it when. And again, this now is back in the Code of Federal Regulations. Area Office Administration, a Director of Selective Service shall prescribe the number of area offices to be established and shall define the boundaries thereof. Registration, okay, over here, so registration. under Selective Service law consists of completing a registration card or other method of registration prescribed by the Director of Selective Services by a person required to register, and the recording of the registration information furnished by the registrant in the records master computer file of the Selective Service System. Registration is completed when both these actions have been accomplished. Okay? So who's the person required to register? Well, that's the registration board. They're required to register you. I don't think they're talking about you. I think they're talking about them. You're the registrant. They're the register. They're required to register you. And they need to put it into the book. Unless they do it, it ain't happened. The methods of registration prescribed by the director include completing the Selective Service registration card at a classified post office. Again, what is that? Maybe we should go down and ask them for a Selective Service registration card to see what one is. I think I'll do that. Registration on the Selective Service internet website, telephone registration, registration on approved federal or state government forms, registration through high school and college registrants, Selective Service reminder, I guess that's reminder, mail back card. Okay, but like in a lot of states, the governor does it for you, or the Secretary of State does when you get a driver's license, I guess if you check a box. Now, I don't know if that's an approved form or not, but that's how they're doing it, you know, in state of Michigan or state of Arizona or whatever the state is, which isn't, well, I don't think it's done right. Registration procedures. Persons required by Selective Service law and proclamation president to register shall be registered in accordance with procedures prescribed by Director of Selective Services. Duty of persons required to register. A person required by Selective Service law to register has the duty to complete the registration process by method prescribed by the Director of Selective Service and to record thereon his name, date of birth, sex, Social Security account number, current mailing address, permanent residence. So now, is that permanent residence, the township, right, place of residence, or is it your house, but with the address backwards, where it's street and then number, right? 14 Mile Road Northeast, 10955, or 10955, 14 Mile Road Northeast. Because on the card for the driver's license, we're talking about your permanent residence or your residence that has the frickin' address backwards, and also it includes your county. Telephone number, so forth and so on. To submit for inspection upon request evidence of his identity, the person is authorized to accept registration information. Okay, so, you know, you couldn't really do that over the internet, I don't think. Maybe you could. You could send it to them, I guess. I don't know how they're doing that part. Every registrant shall be given Selective Service number. The Director of Selective Service will replace the evidence upon written request of the registrant. The Director of Selective Service may cancel the registration. And so Bob in Arizona, he got his, and it's got some defects on it. Like they blanked out the Social Security number, except the last four. We don't really know what it is. They put spaces in his name where they wouldn't normally be. I don't know that it had all the details on it that they're talking about here, but, you know, this is what says has to be on there. And to record thereon name, date of birth, sex, Social Security number, current mailing address, permanent mailing address, telephone number, date, signed, and signature. It has to have all those elements. We'll get with Bob later and see if his does. The Director of Selective Service may cancel the registration. I'll go figure. I'll just go ahead and cancel it. Why? Well, because, you know, it was infiltrated by an esquire, an officer of King George III's successors. If a registrant fails to claim and exercise any right or privilege within the required time, he shall be deemed to have abandoned the right or privilege unless the Director of Selective Service, for good cause, waives the time limit. Well, you failed to frickin' be classified because it's a privilege. I said earlier, way earlier, I said the Congress says it's a privilege, right? So you're not exercising your privilege by being registered and classified. Because you weren't registered and classified, you're not going to get free health care. You could have free health care right now, all emergency health care. That's what the law said. A document other than a registration card received by an element of the Selective Service System will be considered to have been filed on the date that it was received, provided that the document was received, which was transmitted by the United States Postal Service. I don't think that's happening anymore. The United States Postal Service is not in operation because there's no Board of Governors. For the United States Postal Service to be operating, it has to have 11 governors, and there's apparently only 2 listed, and it takes 6 to have a quorum. So the United States Postal System, as designed by law, is not there, so you can't send it by the United States Postal Service. And bears a legible USPS postmark date will be deemed to have been received on that date. Duty of registrants, reporting by registrants of their current status. To notify the system within 10 days of any change in the following items of information that he provided on his registration form: name, current mailing address, current mailing address, current mailing address, address and permanent residence address, mailing address, and permanent residence address. Okay, again, is that Township Hall? The township? Is that the place they're talking about? Or are they talking about permanent residence address and just having your freaking numbers backwards? Street, then number. And mentioning the county that it's in, because that's part of your permanent residence address, is what county are you in. Your mailing address doesn't have your county on it. To submit to the classifying authority, to who? Do what? To submit to the classifying authority. Hey, what is this? Reporting by registrants of their current status. Notice, until otherwise notified by a director of Selective Service, it is the duty of every registrant who registered after July 1st, 1980, to submit to the classifying authority all information concerning his status within 10 days after the date of which the classifying authority mails him a request therefore, or within such longer period as may be fixed by the classifying authority. Has anybody got something mailed to them by the classifying authority? Because who is that? Well, we read just a little bit earlier. That's your local board. All right, this is subsection 1621.1, reporting by registrants of their current status. To submit to the classifying authority all information concerning his status within 10 days after the date on which the classifying authority mails him a request therefore, or within such longer period as may be fixed by the classifying authority. Well, I'm not going to wait. I want to take it down to him now. I want to, exercise my privilege to be classified. But I don't have to be. I don't have to. I'm not in the book. I might do it anyways. On and on and on. This is Welcome to America. This is my first video you ever watched. This is the crazy stuff that's really happening. Quit blaming George Soros, and what's happening in other places of the world. No, this is right here in your backyard, being done by the people that you respect. Right? Judges, attorneys, professionals of all kinds. They're doing this. They're twisting the words. Classification rules. So here's all the different classifications, right? Here's the classes. Each registrant shall be classified in one of the classes prescribed in this part. All registers available for unrestricted military service shall be classified 1-A. Class 1-C, members of the Armed Forces of the United States or National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration or the Public Health Service. Right? So you have a classification in the draft system that has nothing to do with the fact that you volunteered to the Department of Defense. This is the Selective Service System, and they're independent systems. Every registrant who is or who becomes, by enlistment or appointment, a commissioned officer, a warrant officer, a pay clerk, an enlisted man, or an aviation cadet of the regular Army, the Navy, the Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration, or the Public Health Service. Right? It didn't say anything about induction. It said by enlistment or appointment. You have, we would have our separate classification in the draft system, but you still have to be classified. You need to go and tell them, I'm already in. I volunteered. Right? Put me down as 1C, I think it was. Yes, sir. Classifying authority. The following officials are authorized to classify registrants into the indicated classes established by 160, so forth. The Director of Selective Services, all of them except 1A-O, 10, 2D, 3-A, and 4D. But those can be done by the local board. 1AO, 10, 2D, 3A, or 4D. Right? So they have all these different things that people can do. We just have to figure out, go get classified and go from there. Till you know what your classification is, how are you going to do anything? Except as otherwise, this is submission of claims, except as otherwise expressly provided by the director, no document relating to any registrant's claim or potential claim will be retained by the Selective Service System, and no file relating to the registrant's possible classification status will be established prior to the registrant being ordered to report for induction. They're not going to keep any records that you've asked to have this stuff done. Isn't that handy? Not until, induction time. If all out war, we're going to call you in. Well, then they'll keep track. Basis of classification. The registrant's classification shall be determined on the basis of the official forms of the Selective Service System and other written information in his file, oral statements if made by the registrant at his personal appearance before the board, and oral statements if made by registrants witnessing at his personal appearance. Basis of classification. The registrant's classification shall be determined on the basis of the official forms of the Selective Service and other written information in his file, oral statements if made by the registrant at his personal appearance before the board, and oral statements if made by the registrant's witnesses at his personal appearance. The file shall be subject to review by the registrant during normal business hours. So they're supposed to have a file for you at your local classification office. Assignment of registrant to a local board. A registrant is assigned to the local board that has jurisdiction over his permanent address. Well, there we go. They're going to know what your permanent address is. That he last furnished the Selective Service System prior to issuance of his induction order. Okay, so, what's prior to induction? What's prior to the issuance of an induction order? Well, that would be registration and classification. Basis of classification in Class 1-A-O. A registrant must be a conscientious opposed to participation in combat training services in the armed forces. So basically, you could be in, but you're opposed. And so they give you all these options to be classified, right? That's the point. It's like, okay, if you're a conscientious objector, we'll go down to be classified and tell them. and get them to agree. You'll still get your free health care, right? Because you're registered and classified. So they wouldn't put you into war, but they'd give you something else to do. You can, take care of the bomb shelter, help the wounded. Classification by local board, Part 1648. Authority of local board. A local board shall consider and determine all claims which it receives in accordance with these other sections of this chapter. No action shall be taken by the board in absence of a quorum of its prescribed members. I think it has to have at least 3. Well, I guess it didn't say. The boards have at least 3, but I don't know how many need to be there. A registrant, opportunity for personal appearance. A registrant who has filed a claim for classification in this 1A or 1O shall be scheduled for personal appearance. File a claim, file a claim, file a claim. It's all about filing a claim. But first thing you need to do is, so I guess you could say you want to get the claim form. That'd be something to do so that you can get before these people. Right? You need the official form to claim you want to be classified 1AO. Conscientious objector. Procedures during personal appearance before the board. A quorum of the prescribed membership of the board shall be present during all personal appearances. Only those members of the board before whom the registrant appears shall classify him. Well, I think you got to appear before the board to be classified. Can we agree? Procedure before the local board shall be open to the public only upon request of or with permission of the registrant. Registrants transferred for classification before a board jurisdiction has undertaken classification. Registrant, the file may at his request be transferred for classification to a local board nearer to his current address than the local board of jurisdiction. Okay, could be here, could be there. Well, we don't know where it is because no one's ever told us. Let's start by finding where it is today, and then we'll determine if it's the right place to be. Who may appeal to a district appeal board? Now, every federal judicial district shall have at least one appeal board. The registrant may, and so my federal judicial district is called the Western District of Michigan, right? United States District Court, Western District of Michigan. Western District of Michigan is my federal judicial district. The registrant may appeal to a district appeal board the denial of his claim for a judgmental classification by the local board. All right, so they refuse to classify me even, fit for duty. Well, I can appeal that. The registrant may appeal to a district appeal board the denial of his claim for his administrative classification by the local board whenever his decisions is not unanimous. Okay, they refuse to classify me, so I'm go to the appeal board. Let's see. Appeal to the president. Okay, well, there's that too. I'm not going to get into that because you can read that for yourself. I want to get this done. I want the Sergeant Major of the Army to appeal to the president. Can somebody please get a hold of him? I don't know if I have any more. That may have been all I did in this. Yeah, okay, that's good enough for now anyways. But I did want to show, that this stuff is actually happening because this one. Michigan Guardsman shows dedication to selective service. Lansing, Michigan. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Allen knows what it means to take on responsibility. As the Selective Service Reserve Force officer and commander of Detachment 1, Michigan, Allen has proved his dedication to ensuring mission success and has won a number of awards for his efforts. The mission of the Selective Service Agency is to furnish manpower to the Defense Department during national emergency, to manage alternative service for men classified as conscientious objectors, and to register, with only a few exceptions, all male U.S. citizens and male immigrants residing in the United States who are the age 18 to 25. Allen is proud of this mission and believes it plays an important role in national security. The Selective Service is in essence the third line of defense for this country behind active duty and reserve components, said Allen. Though we hope we never need it, we need to ensure the system is ready to respond to any threat that may come. That is why this assignment is so meaningful to me. Allen and his assistant, Major Robert LaPointe, work to ensure that each of the counties they are responsible for recruits, trains, and retains members of the local Selective Service Boards. Board members must meet a set of criteria and are required to attend initial training as well as annual continual training. Allen himself has recruited 65 board members. Local board members are uncompensated volunteers who play an important community role closely connected with our national defense. If a military draft becomes necessary, approximately 2,000 local and appeal boards throughout America would decide whether young men in each community receive deferments, postponements, exemptions from military service based on federal guidelines. Well, what would those guidelines be? Well, the fact that you were registered and classified. And now we're going to start putting people into offices. In his tenure, Allen and his detachment have received 5 awards from the Selective Service Agency, including Director of Excellence Award 2016-17, Reserve Force Officer of the Quarter for 2 quarters, and the detachment has earned Top Detachment of the Region. Allen began his team with the Selective Service in 2013. Or began his term, Allen began his term with the Selective Service in 2013. So this is that officer they're talking about earlier, right, that is somehow tied to the Selective Service. The appeal person, I call him. I forget already. He saw the assignment as an opportunity to truly take ownership of the program and attributes his success in building board membership to the support of his leadership, namely Major General Michael Stone. General Stone gave me a direction and an end goal, said Allen, but he left it up to me to get the program there. The ability to take ownership of the program only motivated me more to do so. Allen is responsible for 56 of Michigan's 83 counties. And his area boasts 100% readiness standing for Selective Service Boards. Allen credits the relationship that exists across many organizations for the outstanding readiness levels of the state has achieved. So I keep thinking, well, maybe these boards are like, the local American Legion. All former military, right? Civilians now sitting on a board. All veterans. We have built strong relationship with veteran organizations, legislatures, and our sister defense organizations to create a healthy network for the common goal, said Allen. This network is our legacy. My assistant, Major LaPointe, will carry it on and build from it. If you're interested in serving on your local service board, please contact Major Robert LaPointe at this address. Ends up, he's a science teacher at a high school, right? He's a reserve guy, and I'll be contacting him. So, hey, the things are there. They're giving out awards. Everything is in place. The system is set. It just needs us to show up and say, I want to be classified. I want to have my free health care. Amen. I'm going to go find that section. I'm going to leave it with that. I'm going to go find that, and then I'll be done. We'll see you soon. Okay, and finally, then, Section 461 of the Selective Service Act, Emergency Medical Care, under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the President, Funds available to carry out the provisions of this title shall also be available for the payment of actual and reasonable expenses of emergency medical care, including hospitalization, of registrants who suffer illness or injury, and the transportation and burial of the remains of registrants who suffer death while acting under orders issued under the provisions of this title. Said sections, right? That's the orders, these said sections. But such burial expenses shall not exceed maximum Secretary of Veterans Affairs may pay under provisions of something for the Veterans, United States Code, any case. So you're being ordered to register and be classified, then you get emergency medical care and hospitalization. And they're keeping that from you because you're not classified yet. Wow, that's huge. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for listening. God bless. We'll see you.